Good afternoon to those of you who are on the East Coast. Those following in the Central and Western time zones, I want to wish you a good morning. Those following from Israel and Europe and parts abroad, wishing you a good evening. Today's broadcast is actually not a live broadcast. We had the incredible opportunity, the honor to meet with Aviva Siegel, and that's why we're broadcasting this a couple of days early. Many of you have seen, whether it was in the White House in Washington, whether on cable television, many of you have seen Aviva Siegel. Today, we are here to hear the story of the life of Aviva and Keith Seigel. And she's going to be sharing with us her background, the family's background, October 7th, what's happened. And please God, we all are anticipating, we're yearning for the release and the liberation of Keith. Aviva, we want to thank you for making time, especially at this very, very crucial and challenging time, making time for us. Aviva, please, if you could share your story.
I just want to start. Thank you, everybody, for listening to me. And I just want to start that on Sunday, Emily Damari came out, and she's from Kibbutz Kfar Aza, and she's one of my daughter's best friends. And it's just, I don't know how to explain it in words, but it just fills my heart so. It's just hard to explain how I feel, because to see my daughter and to listen to her, how happy she is that Emily's back, and to hear how much she's waiting for Keith, her father, to come back. It breaks my heart that he's not back yet, but we're holding our fingers, and I just hope that when it will be recorded to you, Keith will be back already. So let's all just hope together. Keith and I have been married for nearly 44 years, and I met Keith, and, you know, I fell in love with Keith after a second. He just opened his mouth, he said 3 words, and I was in love with him. It was strange. I was 18 years old, and he didn't have to do much for me to fall in love with him, because he's just that kind of person. He's just so sweet, he's so kind, and he's just wonderful to be with everywhere, and everybody just loved him. He's like a person's people. Everybody likes to talk to him. You know, you often find these people that know everything, and Keith's that kind of person. He just knows everything, he remembers everything interests him. So he's a pleasure, such a pleasure to be with. And we've got 4 children. The older one is Shai. He's 41 years old. And I'll tell you a little bit about Shai when I talk about the 7th. And we've got 3 daughters, and we've got 5 grandchildren. And we've been living on Kibbutz Kfar Aza for more than 40 years. And we've really haven't had it easy on Kfar Aza. I, for many, many years, used to tell Keith, okay, Keith, we've had enough. Let's leave. We need to leave to a place that we can sleep at night and not have these missiles coming on us in the middle of the night, and then I don't go back to sleep. And then at 6 o'clock, I have to go to work, because that's what people do, even in that area. And I just didn't sleep for months and for years. And it really affected me. We used to, as a family, hide in the bathroom before we had our little shelter. And when I was outside, I used to hide behind trees. And I used to hear the whistle of the missile coming from Gaza towards me, and just pray that I'll keep alive. And that was my life. And that was Keith's life. And Keith just loved Kibbutz Kfar Aza, and wasn't prepared to even think about leaving. He said that if we leave, who's going to look after the border? So that's the kind of person Keith is. And so it all started at 6:30 on the 7th, while we heard the first missile, and we ran to our little shelter. We didn't even close the door, because we didn't have time, because we never have time, because it normally hasn't, we don't have seconds to hide ourselves when it does fall. So we didn't close the window, we didn't close the door, and after 2 missiles, we left the little shelter. And I remember looking outside and seeing Gaza, because we're very close to Gaza, and I saw all the missiles coming towards Kfar Aza, going towards Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, the whole country. And it felt like and looked like the end of the world. It was just so loud, and my house was shaking. That's how close we are. And then 2 seconds later, we were back into our little shelter, and we knew and we felt that something different was happening that time. So Keith closed the door, and then I remember like looking at him and saying, okay, what about the window? And he closed the window, and we were sitting there with the door just closed and the window just closed. But then we heard shooting, and that was Hamas terrorists killing our next door neighbors already. And so I told Keith, we better lock the door and lock the window. And he did that. And we were just like looking at each other. And I was just so scared. I was shaking at that time. And Keith was trying to relax me and saying, I locked the window, I locked the door, we're safe. But I just didn't feel safe. It sounded so bad outside. And then my son told us that he's living in a different house on the kibbutz, that he's holding his fingers, and we got disconnected from Shai. And then he said that he can hear the Arabic from outside. And I was sure the whole time I was in Gaza that they killed my son, Shai. And I wonder today if Keith knows that, because so many times I've done interviews and my daughters have done interviews all over the world, and every time we try and say that Shai's alive. So we just hope that he does know that his son's alive. But I can't even imagine him a year and 3 months thinking that Shai isn't alive, because I was just sure about that. So we were sitting inside for 4 hours before we were taken in such a brutal way. They pushed us, they pulled my hair. They pulled me out of the house from the back window, and they damaged my knee, and I have problems with my knee, and I'm going to have to live with my knee like that for the rest of my life. And they pushed Keith, they broke his ribs, and they shot him. They shot around me. I'm lucky that it didn't hurt me. And we arrived in Keith's car to a tunnel in Gaza. On the way, we saw thousands of people from Gaza standing outside their houses, welcoming us with clapping their hands and shouting to us, Allahu Akbar. While we were shaking, there were 2 terrorists with us, one with a gun and one with a knife in front of our faces. And the driver just flew into Gaza. So we arrived there, I think, not even too many minutes. That's how close we are. And we arrived, and they took us immediately underneath the ground. I was shaking, and Keith was trying to calm me down. I don't know how he was strong like he was. I really don't understand, but I just know that he did everything he could to help me, because I was shaking. And he was shot. His pants were full of blood, and his ribs were broken. And that was the start. And just a couple of minutes after we arrived there, 5 other people came from the kibbutz, and they were all full of blood and shot, and we were all underneath the ground in a shock. And I say that if there was a camera to take a picture of what we looked like and our reaction to what we went through, we would have been out a long time ago. So we tried to help each other, and that's what we did. And Keith and I were moved from there, and we were moved 13 times from houses to underneath the ground. One of the times they took us underneath the ground and just left us there. And, you know, it's not only words, but it's really, really something that I felt that I'm sure that not many people have an opportunity to be in a state like that. I touched death, and I was sure that I'm going to die underneath the ground. There was no oxygen for Keith and I. And after more than a couple of days, Keith looked at me and he said that he feels that he hasn't got any oxygen to breathe. And I could see, because he was like that, and I was doing the same thing, trying to collect the air that wasn't, and just thinking, when am I going to die? How's it going to be like? Is Keith going to die before me? And I did, say goodbye to my family and to my life. And I remember that morning feeling the death, the terrorists came down, and we begged them to take us out. And he looked at us and he said, sorry, no house. And that was one of the moments that I'll never, ever forget, because it just felt like I'm dying. And luckily, after a couple of hours, they came down and they took us out. And when I came out to the fresh air, it wasn't fresh air because the air in Gaza wasn't clear because of what was happening there. But I could breathe. And it was like it was being born again. I remember looking at Keith and the girl that was with us, and we all couldn't take our smile off our faces and said to each other, we're going to live. And that was only one thing out of many things that was taken away from us as being human beings. We were starved while they ate in front of us. I'll never forget one of the times, after more than 20 hours, the girl with us got the guts to ask, when are we going to get some food? Because we were starving. And the Hamas terrorists just looked at us and said, it takes a long time to make food. And I was wondering what we're going to get. But after 24 hours, all we got was a half a piece of pita that was dry. And that moment, I decided that every piece of bread that I get, I'm going to half it and I'm going to hide it for Keith because he was losing weight. I couldn't see myself losing weight, but I could see Keith. I could see his bones out and I could see how weak he was. I lost 10 kilos in Gaza in 51 days. I was dehydrated. I had an infection in my stomach. And when I came out, I couldn't even walk. I was so weak. I had to lean on somebody. And it took me months before I felt like I was me again in different ways. And I went through too much as a human being. And I can't even figure out how Keith is there for nearly 500 days in Gaza with the same terrorists that treated me like I wasn't a person. If they pushed me and pulled me by the hair, if they covered my eyes with black material, and I wasn't able to see where I need to put my next step, and I had to go downstairs just like he did. We nearly fell. And when I stopped and couldn't feel the next step, he took my hair and he threw me into the car. I am 63 years old. I don't understand why he did that. Keith, with his ribs broken, used to beg them to let him lie down because he was in so much pain. And with his hand that was injured, I was the only one that took care of Keith. I'll never forget, he used to beg them, just let me lie down for 5 minutes because I'm in so much pain. They used to smile. I'll never forget one of the boys that was with us just for a short while. They put this plastic and handcuffed his hands. And when they came to take it out, they cut his hand and smiled when they did that. It was just so sore for me to see the people around me suffer like they did when the Hamas terrorists just touched one of the girls and did whatever he wanted to her body. She's a young girl, she's still in Gaza. And for me to see that and to understand that that's what they're doing was worst thing that any mother or person could go through, because I loved the girls already and they became like my daughters and I could not protect them. And one of the girls, when they handcuffed her and they put a blanket on her and they just beat her. 4 terrorists beat her with a stick and with their guns. And when she came back, she just sat like a baby and sobbed. She was crying and I couldn't even give her a hug because I wasn't allowed to. The only thing that I could as a human being, look in her eyes and give her love through my eyes. And that's not enough for me. So I've been screaming and shouting from the minute I've come back to get out all the hostages because we need them back alive. And I think they've gone through, if I went through too much, they've gone through so much more than me. It's terrible. It's just really, really terrible.
Aviva, in the time that you were in Gaza, besides being with Keith, so were you with one, two, three other hostages? When you were there those 51 days, how many people were together?
Like I said, the first day that we arrived there, we were taken underneath the ground, and we were 7 people from Kfar Aza. So it was Keith and I, and there was a family of 4 that the mother came in and she said, they shot my daughter. They shot my daughter. She fainted and I wasn't able to wake her up. So they shot her in front of my eyes. And my husband, the father of the 3 children, they just murdered him because he tried to protect them. And this family of 3 children and the mother came and they were with us for a couple of days at the beginning. We were all in a complete and utterly shock, trying to help each other. And there was another boy, the one that they cut his hand. They took him away from us after 2 days. And I remember just like, it happened in seconds. And I remember like while he was like walking to the door, I said to him, I love you and be strong. And after a couple of days, 2 girls that are still in Gaza were with us for a long time. And another girl was with us, the one that came with us underneath the ground in the tunnel. So we were 5 most of the time. Keith and I and 3 girls.
And of the 5, you were the only one that was liberated after 51 days.
I was out and one of the girls, but the 2 other girls have stayed in Gaza and they're still in Gaza. And I'm holding my fingers that very soon they'll be home with their parents.
Aviva, can you share with us some of the people that you've met, whether it's in the United States, Europe, government officials in Israel? Can you describe some of the, I know that you've spent day and night and you've spent the rest, since you've been liberated, your whole focus has been on the other hostages. Can you share with us some of these experiences?
I've met Biden 3 times. I've met Blinken at least 7 times. And I've met, so many people, so many times, everybody that is being involved in United States. I've been to United States 11 times, 11. I've been to Geneva, I've been to München, I've been to England, talking. I've been in the UN, in New York and in Geneva, and trying to tell everybody that I wasn't treated like a person, that this world cannot allow any human to go through what I went through, and any human in this world can just do whatever they want to whoever, because that's what they did to us, the Hamas terrorists. They are responsible to treat us in such a cruel way. One of the nights I was lying down and it wasn't even a mattress. It was something very thin that you put on a mattress. It was winter ready and it was cold, but I did get a blanket and I covered myself and I was a little bit too hot. So I took my foot out the blanket and he came and he started screaming at me that if I do it again, he's going to kill me. And that's the amount of control that they had on us, because we weren't allowed to move, we weren't allowed to stand. And I don't know if any of you have had like a back that's sore and just wanted to stretch out and move a little bit. So my back was caught and Keith was too. And we just wanted to move a little bit sometimes and we weren't allowed to. We just had to sit and keep quiet. We weren't allowed to talk. Most of the time we weren't even allowed to whisper. And we were in dark places that we couldn't even see the food that we were eating. And, it seemed like they loved it. They loved that control that they had on us. And I just don't understand it. I just don't understand that. They took Keith and they shaved him looking like an Arab. And I remember when Keith came out, He was just so embarrassed, and he said that he's been so humiliated. And the 4 terrorists just stood in front of us and they started laughing. And, it was a moment not of what Keith looked like, of what Keith felt, sitting on a chair and letting this Arab terrorist that must be maybe 23, 24, 25 maybe, do whatever he wanted to somebody that's 65 years old. And it's just the worst feeling, that you feel like you're not human, that you belong to somebody else. The young girls that were forced to get into the shower to wash themselves with salty water, while they had to leave the door open for the Hamas terrorists just to watch them, that nobody's ever seen their body. They're young girls. Or that the terrorist, one of the days, one of the girls came in and she was just so cross. And she said, he poured boiling water on my hand on purpose, just because he felt like doing that. And he felt like hearing her scream when he did that. But why did he do that? Why did they treat us like they did? I don't understand it. So you asked me about seeing the people. I was at more than 100 meetings with the Congress people in Washington. And, any important person in the United States, just name them. And I've been there, sitting in a meeting, begging them to get Keith and to get all the hostages out. Because it's just, the cruelest thing that anybody should go through. And me knowing, because I was there, what they're going through. And they're still going through. I know that there's a deal on the table, and Keith is supposed to be one of the people that will come out. I can't wait for that to happen. But after the 33 people will come out, there's going to be remained 65 people in Gaza that are suffering, that are begging to get out. So I don't know how many people saw the video of Keith that was released in April, but I didn't, because it was too difficult for me to see Keith sad. And I do know from my daughter that saw it, that Keith is crying and begging to get out. That's more than 9 months ago. And Keith looked like he was very sad. He looked pale. He looked old. He looked thin. I can't wait. I just can't wait for him to get out, and can't wait for all the hostages. We have something in Israel that's called a forum, and it's lots of people that have been volunteering to help us, and lots of families, the hostage families, come here, and we come here quite often, like I'm sitting in the forum today, and we're together, and we feel like one big family. And for me to see a mother that a child is 23 years old and is still in Gaza, to know that he's going to be the last one to get out of Gaza, and how long it's going to take, and if it'll happen, my heart is broken. We need to scream for them and do everything we can for them to come out.
Aviva, we want to thank you for sharing with us. And, and there's no way that we can feel what you're going through. And there's no way that we can even imagine what you're going through. But what you've shared with us, and hopefully many, many others will be watching this, whether it's on the broadcast Sunday, whether it's on the TV, the JBS network throughout the United States, but your message has to be heard. It has to be heard, and it has to be integrated, it has to be felt by all of us. And we can't thank you enough, not only for your bravery, for your articulation. And please, God, with God's help, we will see Keith, and we'll see you reunited with Keith, and all of the families reunited with their loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody that's doing everything they can. And I want to thank all the people that are sending money to the army and just, to this country. And we really, really need you. I want to share with you that my My sister's son was in the army for more than 9 months, and he saw his friends being killed in front of his eyes. And, you know, he's broken up into pieces, and it's very difficult for me to see him like that. And I know how much you're giving to this country, all of you. So I just can't wait for Keith to be sitting here and having a Zoom with all of you and just saying thank you for bringing me home alive. Thank you so much, everybody.
Aviva, we pray for the day when we can have a Zoom, we can be, that you're reunited with Keith, with your family, and that we can all meet you and hear Keith's story from a position of health, from a position of strength. God knows what he's going through now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aviva.